Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the exalted one, the worthy one, the supremely enlightened one. Arabata nikamata yunjata buddha sasane dunata machuno senang nalagarang yoimasmin dhamma vinaye appamatto vihessati pahaya jate sansa dukkha santang karissati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Venerable members of the Mahasangha, nuns, friends in the Dhamma, in this moment we are going to discuss one of the main topics in Buddhism, which is Sammaditthi or right understanding. Vision, mission and result explained by the Supreme Buddha. Especially, we here explain Sammaditthi or right understanding based on Sammaditthi Sutta, which comes in Majjhima Nikaya. When we go to a place or institute, we can usually see that vision and mission. Dhammagaru saha mehwara. When we come to Buddhism, it is very important to understand Buddhism explains not only vision and mission, but even result. Satya jnana, Kitta jnana, Katha jnana. Or Sutame jnana, then Bhavitaya, or Chintame jnana, and Bhavaname panya, and Vimukti jnana. That is very important. When we come to Buddha's message, Sammaditthi is divided into two. One of them is the mundane level Sammaditthi. The second one is the supramundane level Sammaditthi. According to Mahachattarisaka Sutta, Buddha says, Sammaditthim paham bhikkhave dvayam vadami. Ati bhikkhave Sammaditthi sāsavā puñña bhāgiyā upadipayapakkhā. Ati bhikkhave Sammaditthi Ariya Anasava Lokuttara Magganga. One of Sammaditthi or right understanding is that Sammaditthi or right understanding based on the conventional truth, especially Kammasakata Jnana. Sāsava Puñña Bhāgiyā Upadipayapakkhā. Based on Laukika Puñña or Lokiya Puñña or Puñña. And the second one is Lokuttara Sammaditthi based on ultimate truth. The purpose of Kammasakata Sammaditthi is to point out the path of a blissful life or heavenly path. The second one, the Lokuttara Sammaditthi based on giving a path to the liberation or enlightenment. When we listening to Buddha's message and also when we understand the Buddha's message and when we have Sammaditthi, wise reflection, we develop our Sammaditthi or right understanding. The very first understanding that we receive is that we understand our samsaric journey. According to the very first sentence in Dhammapada, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, Mano Setta Manomaya. Mind is the forerunner, mind is chief, mind made Dade. If someone does something with impure mind, suffering follows him. And also if someone does something with the pure mind, happiness follows him because of his pure mind. As the result of this process, we know very well how we go to the lower elements and also how we go to the higher elements, blissful lives. With this understanding, we always try to overcome negative thoughts, sabba papa sakaranam, and kusala supasambada, not to do evil, and kusala supasambada, practicing good deeds, especially generosity, virtue, and meditation, dana, sila, bhavana. This is the first vision. As the result of this first vision, we practice three meritorious deeds: generosity, virtue, and meditation. Dhanancha samacharyancha metta chittancha bhavi. As the result of this practice, we have a confidence that we never fall into hell. That is the very first refuge, assurance that we receive through having the first step of Sammaditthi or right understanding. For that, Buddha especially explains the 8 meritorious streams. That is very important. According to the Punyabhisanda Sutta, the Buddha says 8 meritorious streams. He who goes to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for refuge and practices 5 precepts, these 8 things decide our next life. It means we will have a blissful life. Especially there is a very special discourse, Sankhara Uppati Sutta. Sankhara Uppati Sutta explains the way how we receive a blissful life. As a result of practicing Saddha and Sila. Saddha belongs to the triple gem. And also Sila means 5 precepts. Among them, practicing 5 precepts is more important. If a person does practice 5 precepts, it means he has an assurance that he never fall into hell. That is a great refuge that we have. Not only that, Buddha says in Sankhara Uppati Sutta, if a person practices saddha, confidence, virtue, generosity, and especially panya, he can decide where he will be reborn, whether in the human realm or heaven realm or a Brahma realm. Not only that, very special thing, even though he hasn't become the Sotapanna, the extreme entry, he has confidence that where he will be reborn and also in which caste he will be reborn. That is very important. Actually, that's a great refuge that we receive as the disciples of the Buddha. This is the very first step of vision, mission, and result in the mundane level. And also, the second step of that Sammaditthi, understanding the Four Noble Truths, how suffering arises and how suffering ceases. For that, Sammaditthi Sutta guides us to develop our Sammaditthi. There are 16 things that help us to develop our Sammaditthi or right understanding. It doesn't mean that we should develop these 16 things. Even one thing, if we can develop, we can come to the Sammaditthi. That is very important. Among them, I would like to take the very first one. He who knows the Kusala and Kusala Mula, Akusala and Akusala Mula, he can receive right understanding. He who knows unwholesomeness and the root of unwholesomeness, and wholesomeness and the roots of wholesomeness, what are the unwholesomeness? It means logo akusala moolang, doso akusala moolang, moho akusala moolang. And also again it explains what are the unwholesome things, such as killing beings, so on. And also kusala moola, the roots of wholesomeness, alobha, adosa, amoha, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. If a person knows these roots and the things, he can come to the Sammaditthi for right understanding. The next one is ahara, for nutriment, food. There are 4 nutriments Buddha has explained. Yes, Venerable Sariputta explains. There are 4 foods, 4 nutriments, such as Kabalikarahara, Passahara, Vijnanahara, Manosanchetanahara. You know, Venerable says we have to overcome these 4 nutriments. Don't worry, you have lunch and breakfast. The thing is, the person who eradicated defilements receive these things without craving. Arahants go for begging food and they receive food and they eat food, but they have overcome the desire of food. That is very important. The concept of food is very important in Buddhism. The next one, very special thing is Satya or the Four Noble Truths. Last days also we discussed the Four Noble Truths. Here again we are going to explain it because it is very, very important. Our entire understanding in what the Buddha taught depends on understanding the Four Noble Truths, especially understanding how suffering arises and how suffering ceases. According to Anuradha Sutta, the Buddha says, in the past and the present, I explain only suffering and the cessation of suffering. According to Gavampati Sutta, which comes in such Samyutta, if a person understands one truth, he is able to understand other truths too. These 4 things are interrelated. And when we go to understand the Four Noble Truths, firstly we meet Dhammacakka Sutta. When we go to the Satya Samyutta, we have more information. And again, when we go to Satya Vibhanga, in Vibhanga Pakarana, we have more details. When we go to Yamaka Pakaranas, in Satya Yamaka, we have very special information about the suffering and the noble truth of suffering. When Buddha explained the Four Noble Truths in the first time in the Varanasi for 5 ascetic people, they were gifted persons. Actually, Buddha has explained this Four Noble Truths for them in short because they were very gifted person. But when we come to the deeper level, we have a very special understanding and information about the Four Noble Truths. And also especially from here, we are discussing the ultimate truth, the absolute truth, that directly helps us to overcome the samsaric circle. Now, this information doesn't depend into the conventional truth. Now we are going to explain the things which directly helps us to gain the knowledge of ultimate truth. Here we see a very special information about the Dukkha Satya. When we are going to understand the Four Noble Truths, according to the Satya Yamaka, there is a difference between Dukkha and Dukkha Satya, Samudaya and Samudaya Satya, Nirodha and Nirodha Satya, Magga and Magga Satya. My dear Venerable says, please try to read. You have to read only 2 or 3 pages, not a very lot of things. There is a very special explanation about the suffering and the noble truth of suffering, arising of suffering and the noble truth of the arising of suffering, the cessation of suffering and the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to suffering and the noble truth of that leads to getting rid of suffering. Among them, I explain only one thing, which is suffering and the noble truth of suffering. Our right understanding directly depends on understanding suffering and the noble truth of suffering. And also, when we refer a discourse or gatha, stanza in Buddhism, we should have a skill that whether this discourse or verse explains one truth or 4 truths or several things. How do we know it? There are 4 special words. For the first one, dukkha satya, dukkha satyam parimeya. Where that is which parimeya, we should understand this is the first truth. If somewhere it is that the second one, pahatabba, that means the second satya or samudaya satya. If there is something which is satchikatabba, what is that? That is nirodha satya. If there is something which is bhavitabba, what is that? That is magga satya. For an example, when Jata Sutta explains Sile patittahaya naro sapanyo chittam panyancha bhavayam. What is that? That is magga satya. Buddha says, parinyayang parinyatang bhave tabbancha bhavitam. If there is something which should understand, I understood it. That is the first one. And again, Buddha says, patabban pahiname. If someone should be overcome, I overcome it. Bhave tabbancha bhavitam. If something should be developed, I develop it. How many truths are there? 3. This is a very special skill that we should develop, especially as monks. Here, we should understand dukkha and dukkha satya. In some places, we can see, even though Buddha explained dukkha, it includes not only dukkha, but even dukkha satya too. We should be clever to understand whether here only dukkha or dukkha and dukkha satya both. The very first one that Buddha says, Kataman chauso dukkha arya satyam. In Yamaka Prakarana, it explains, Kaikan dukkhan chetasika dukkhan tapetva avasesan dukkha satyam. If there are anything except physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering, that is not suffering. We can see this information in Patisambhida Magga according to Charyananatta Jnana. In Charyananatta Jnana, there are 3 behaviors which are Vijnanacharya, Ajnanacharya, and Jnanacharya. Vijnanacharya means the very first experience that we receive through contact something. That is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neutral. That is just result. Vijnanacharya. The very first experience is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neutral. But very important thing, in very first experience, Chakku, Rupa, Chakku Vijnana, Chakku Sampassa, Rupa Sanya, Rupa Sanchetana. Here we can see 5 aggregates. In these 5 aggregates, we can see it is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neutral. That is just contact. We receive only the very first experience, such as Rupa Sanya, Saddha Sanya, Gandha Sanya, so on. And also again, we can see another thing in Vibhanga Pakarana, Jnana Vibhanga. Na panchahi vijnanehi kinche dhammam pativijanati anyatra abhinipatamatta. We are unable to recognize something through 5 consciousnesses. Just contact. What are the 5 consciousnesses? Eye consciousness, nose consciousness, ear consciousness, so on. These words are very important. We can see these same words in various places. Sometimes Buddha says, you should understand eye consciousness. Sometimes Buddha advises us to, you should overcome eye consciousness. Sometimes Buddha says, we should recognize or understand perception or sanya. Sometimes Buddha says, we should overcome perception, Marichupama sanya. Sanya is like a mirage. And sometimes we can see we should develop sanya or perception according to Girimananda Sutta. When someone asks you, Bhante, what is sanya? What we should do for sanya? What is your answer? That is not the Ekansa Vyakarana answer. That is the Vibhajyavadi, that we should explain it with details. We should again ask, where sanya that you want to understand? In the vipaka level, in the karmic level, in the practice, or in the experience of the Arahantas? Wherever there is consciousness, sanya also there. In the vipaka level, we can see sanya. That sanya is pure. In the sansaric circle, in the Patisampada, we can see sanya. Avidya patya sankhara, there we can see sanya. That sanya should be overcome. That sanya or perception consists with ignorance or delusion. That causes us to have suffering. And also when we practice Dhamma, the Noble Eightfold Path, there also we can see perception. Kirimananda Sutta, Dasa Sanya, Anitya Sanya, Anatta Sanya, Asubha Sanya, so on. Here, as monks especially, we should have this understanding. Vijnana also like that. Consciousness also like that. In the vipaka level, we can see consciousness. That consciousness, pabassaranidam bhikkhave chittam. That consciousness is very pure. And also, according to the some research, Vijnana Deya, Avidya Pacha Sankhara, Sankhara Pacha Vijnana. That Vijnana consists with ignorance. That consciousness should be overcome. And also, according to Chulla Vedala Sutta, Visakha Upasaka asks from Dhammadinna, Ayya, when we see consciousness and wisdom, it can be divided? No. Wherever wisdom, consciousness also there. Not only that, wherever there is ignorance, consciousness is there. That is very important. And we first explained the very first truth, the noble truth of suffering. And again Buddha explains, Kaikang dukkhaṃ cetasika dukkhaṃ dukkhaṃ ca dukkha saccāṃ ca. Physical suffering and mental suffering are the suffering and the noble truth of suffering. If we have some physical suffering and mental suffering, according to Dhammacakka Sutta, Jātipi dukkha, Jarapi dukkha, Vyādipi dukkha, Maranapi dukkha, and so on, there also we can see dukkha satya, or the noble truth of suffering, and also the suffering as well. We can see that is common suffering, that everyone can understand it. We don't need to find a Buddha to understand the noble suffering. Anyone can understand. Even Bodhisattva, before he did his renunciation, he had understood Jati Jara Marana. But after he attained enlightenment, he said very clearly, I discovered something which I had never heard. Ubbe anunusutesu dhammesu chakku mudapadi, jnana mudapadi, panya mudapadi, so on. What is the difference that Buddha previously understood as a bodhisattva and what he realized when he attained enlightenment, Buddhahood? He had understood earlier the dukkha. When he attained enlightenment, he realized the noble truth of suffering, the very first experience, which is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. If we have some sufferings in our day-to-day life, such as jara, marana, soka, parideva, that is suffering. Not only suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering. Why is that? That is suffering based on the very first experience. Without the first experience, we have no the second experience. First we contact something, then if we are ignorant, we come to the samudaya, the extreme of arising, having that ignorance, having that extreme, we take it as my, as me, as my. It's prapancha. That is the suffering, and also that is the noble truth of suffering as well. Why is that? It based on the first experience. Arahants have the noble truth of suffering, but they don't have suffering. They have very first experience, but they are mindful and wise. When it comes to their life, they really understand now already the first experience has ceased. Then their mind is not fixed in the outside material world. As soon as they recognize something through their mind consciousness, they know very well that eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, which are the very first experiences, they have already ceased. They know very well, na pancha vijñāne kinchi dhammam pativijanāti, in the vipaka level, we are unable to recognize something completely. That is very important. And also here we have a very special reference which is Madhupindika Sutta. Madhupindika Sutta is very, very important. It is the honey bowl. When we see the Buddha's message, Buddha clearly explains that in the past and the present, I explain only two things, which is suffering and the cessation of suffering. According to Patipada Sutta, which comes in Abhisamya Samyutta, where Patisampada is explained. According to Patipada Sutta, Buddha says, I explained the Miccha Patipada and Samma Patipada. What is the Miccha Patipada? Wrong practice and right practice. Wrong practice means avidya pacha sankhara, sankhara pacha vijnana, so on. Jati pacha jara marana soka parideva. That belongs to Miccha Patipada, wrong practice, wrong way. And also again Buddha explains Samma Patipada, or right path. What is the right path? Avidyayatve vasyasi viraga nirodha, sankhara nirodha, vijnana nirodha, so on. Finally, jati nirodha, jara marana, soka paridyo, dukkha dogna, supayasa niruddhanti. With the complete cessation of ignorance, mental formations cease. Finally, jati nirodha, jara marana, soka parideva, dukkha dogna, supayasa niruddhanti. With the complete cessation of birth, sorrow, lamentation, aging, sickness, death, all the sufferings cease. Here again we come to the Madhupindika Sutta. There it says, Chakpuncha paticca rupecha upajin chakvinyanam tinnan sangati paso, so on. Dear Venerable says, in which truth here we can see? What is here? Chakkuncha paticca rupecha upajin chakvinyanam tinnan sangati paso, pasapaccha vedana, yang vediti tan sanjananti, so on. Finally, prapancha. Which such does it explains? Yes, very good. Samudaya Satya is here. This is the Miccha Patipada. This I is not the very first experience. This I belongs to the Patisampada via Salayatana. Avidya Pacha Sankhara, Sankhara Pacha Vijnana, Vijnana Pacha, so on. They are all the things belong to the Patisampada. But don't forget, very special thing, here we can see the very first truth also. Why is that? This dukkha someday based on the very first experience, dukkha arisatya. This someday or patisampada facts depend on the very first experience. Without the first experience, this second step doesn't arise. But we should understand the patipada, Miccha Patipada and Samma Patipada. According to Madhupindika Sutta, don't misunderstand. There are some suttas we can see very clearly that they explain Chakkuncha Paticca Rupecha Upajja Chakkuvinjana, Tinna Sangati Passo, Pasapaccha Vedana. Next, it explains if someone has Vedana, after that he has Tanha or craving. With the complete cessation of Tanha, we can overcome the samsaric circle. In another sutta, we can see that explanation. Their very first experience or the second experience are in the first part, and the next part we can see the Nirodha Satya too. But according to Madhupindika Sutta, very clear, here explained the Samudaya Satya, and wherever there is Samudaya Satya, we should understand very clearly Dukkha Satya also there. And also, the very important part of the Madhupindika Sutta is that the second part. What is that? Chakkusmin asati, rupe asati, chakku vijnanam asati. There are no person, content. Chakkusmin asati, where there is no eye, no form, no contact, no feeling, there is nothing. When we explain Madhupindika Sutta, these both parts are very, very important. We should explain them in parallel. What is here? This is the Samma Patipada. Avidyayatve vasyesa viraga nirodha sankhara nirodho sankhara nirodha vijnana nirodho vijnana nirodha so on. There is no vijnana, no rupa, no vedana. Which vedana, which perception, which feeling, which rupa, which chakku? That is the second thing that we take with our ignorance as the Samudaya Satya. Sometimes when we refer such as Indriya Bhavana Sutta, Uttara Manavaka says that how he practices his spiritual path. His teacher Parasarya, he says not to see something, not to hear something is the way how to discipline. That is his spiritual path. They are the Buddha asked. If not seeing or hearing something by birth, blind people and deaf people should be ascetic people, they should be arahants. Because they don't see anything, they don't hear anything, because they are blind, because they are deaf. Here, it is very important. What is chakkusmin asati? What is rupasmin asati? What is chakku vijnani asati? What is no eye, no form, no eye consciousness? What is that? That is the Arahanta's experience. It doesn't mean that he doesn't see something, he doesn't hear something. He sees something, he hears something, smells something. But when he understands something, he knows very well the very first eye, which belongs to the Dukkha Satya, has already ceased. He knows very well. When he understands something, Arhant knows very well. Now I understand something through my mind consciousness. When I recognize something through my mind consciousness, the very first I form, I consciousness, I feeling, I contact, everything has ceased. In his world, there is no eye, no ear, no eye consciousness. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha Satya. Wherever Nirodha Satya, we can see Magga Satya too. Finally, we attain the Nirodha Satya when we attain enlightenment. But in some levels, we can see Vimukti or liberation. When we reduce 5 hindrances, in some levels, having jhanas, we have liberation from hindrances. When we attain stream entry, Sotapanna, we have liberation from Sakkaya-ditthi, Vicikicca, Silabhata, Paramasa. There also we can see a liberation. Example, Chunda Sutta. According to Chunda Sutta, Venerable Chunda came to Ananda, having some robes of Venerable Sariputta who passed recently with sorrowful mind. Then Venerable Chunda told that, my friend Ananda, my brother Sariputta passed away. He was so sad. Having this message, both of them went to the Buddha. Venerable Ananda was so sad, crying. Buddha asked, Ananda, Venerable Sariputta did carry your Sila, Samadhi, Panya, Vimukti, Vimukti Jnana. Vimukti and Vimukti Jnana is explained there. For Ananda. By that time, Venerable Ananda hadn't come to the enlightenment. He was only a person who is Sotapanna. In this reference, we can see final liberation is the enlightenment, arahantship, arahanthood. But in various stages, we can see liberation. When we attain anagami, there also we can see some liberation, that we never come to the kamaloka, sensual world. In various stages, we can see liberation. And here, especially, when we discuss Sammaditthi, here we should be confident in what the Buddha taught. When we see something, if we think that there is something or someone outside the world materially at that moment, it means we are in the samsaric circle. We are having suffering because of our bhava or the process of becoming. And also on the other side, as soon as we know something, if we understand mindfully, wisely, this form has already ceased. I recognize something through my mind consciousness. When Buddha explained this message for some disciples, they were so inspired. They loudly said that, Abhikhantam Bhogotama, Abhikhantam Bhogotama, excellent Bhante, excellent. I can understand what you say. This is the path of liberation. This is the way how we overcome suffering. Whenever we are ignorant, we depend on the outside world. It means outside world can control us. We are controlled by them. Whenever we are wise and mindful at the moment when we experience something through our senses, at that moment, nobody or nothing can disturb our peace of mind because we have made a refuge within us. This is the place where we should be confident in. This is the vision in the absolute truth for the liberation. Having this understanding, Sammaditthi, we become the Sandha, confidence. When we are confident in this message, what the Buddha realized, Sandhati Tathagatasya Bodhi, this is the place where we are confident in what the Buddha realized. Then we dedicate our entire life for this path. Energy arises inside, and sati, samadhi, and panya, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. The more we are confident in this message, the more we dedicate our entire life to practice this path. What is the path? The Noble Eightfold Path. Ujuko nam so maggo, abhehanam sanisa. This is the direct path. Abhihanama sadhisa. Directions are fearless. The more we are confident in this message, the more we dedicate our entire life for practice this path. We give the priority to practice this message, since we know very well, even though we do a lot of things in our life for our happiness, everything is subject to change. We are unable to control anything outside world. We have no real refuge, assurance, emancipation from the outside. There we come to the Dhamma. Dhammadipa bhikkhave virata Dhamma sarana nayana sarana. Dwell with the Dhamma as an island, as a refuge, with no other refuge. What is the refuge that we create through the Dhamma? Which is practicing mindfulness. According to Attadipa Sutta, Buddha says, Dhammadipa, Attadipa means living according to mindfulness. That mindfulness is not alone. That mindfulness should be Sammasati, right mindfulness. That mindfulness starts with Sammaditthi. Sammaditthi pure javam. Right understanding is the forerunner. Right understanding is first. Without vision, mission is blind. Vision without mission is useless. Therefore, Buddha says, Janatoham bhikkhave passato asvanam kayam vadami no ajanato no apassato. I proclaim the liberation for those who know the path, who see the path. That is why, at the very beginning, through associating with the good friends, we should listen to this message and we should develop our mindfulness and also especially Yoniso Manasikara. You know, sometimes some disciples went to practice Dhamma without having this message. For an example, according to Meghiya Sutta, Venerable Meghiya saw a park, mango grove. As soon as he saw it, he wanted to go there without instructions. Then he was not successful. He had to come back. But most of times we can see many disciples, before they left the Buddha or Kalyana Mitta, they listening to this message very clearly from beginning to end. Not beginning to middle. What is the middle? The beginning is Sila, middle is Samadhi or concentration, Pariyosana, or the end is Panya. Buddha says, Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. Excellent is beginning, excellent is middle, excellent is the end. You know, a lot of disciples of the Buddha went to the jungle knowing this message very clearly. After they finished their samatha, they didn't come back to ask Bhante how we practice Vidarsana Bhavana. They never come. They mostly came after having Arahantaship. But sometimes we know, according to Karanimetta Sutta, some disciples came back because of some other reasons. But according to their path, they had no doubt. The reason is that before they left their Kalyanamitta or Sammasambuddha, they had heard everything from A to Z. Then, how suffering arises, how suffering ceases. Whenever we are ignorant, we always think that there is something outside. It doesn't mean that there is no material world. Actually, there is a material world which arises at the moment according to our previous karmic result. There is a material world which consists with the four fundamental elements. Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo. That experience is very instant. It arises and ceases in the vipaka level. But when we understand it, the very first experience has gone. It has ceased. For an example, we usually take the example when we eat something, having something in a plate, when we have something in our mouth, when we are tasting something, we immediately look at the plate. We think that this food is in the plate. Actually, at the moment, if you taste something, that food is in your mouth. That is not in the plate. But always we think the food in the plate when we taste something. We never understand the food which is in the mouth. That is why we have desire to the food which is in the plate. If we know the nature of the food which is in the mouth, we have never craving or desire to attach to the food which is in the mouth. Our entire life also like that. If we know the reality of the form which is in front of us, we have never attached to the material world. We see the world as emptiness. Sunyato lokang avikaso. It means we always understand the ceased world, empty world. It doesn't mean that Buddhism is a Vijnanavada. Everything is in mind. Buddhism never says this. There are 5 aggregates. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. There is a form. That form arises and ceases at the moment. Not only form, but feeling, perception, consciousness, mental formations. Sabbam bhikkave ahuttama sambutam uttvana bhavisati. Everything arises and ceases at the moment. Nothing comes to the present from the past. Nothing goes to the future from the present. It arises and ceases at the moment. But the previous experience, previous 5 aggregates influence the present thought. The present thought influences the next thought. But nothing goes from moment to moment permanently as it is. Therefore, we can understand the very special sentence explanation given by the Buddha. Ahutva sambutam uttvana bhavisati. Not being occurred comes to occurrence. Being occurred will not go to occurrence. This is the golden sentence in Buddhism. Sabbam. Sabbam means everything. Everything, every moment arises and ceases. If we know this reality, we understand in the Vipaka level, we have 5 aggregates, but when we recognize something, when we understand something, we deal with 4 things, 4 aggregates, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. That is why Arhantas have overcome 4 nutriments, Sakarahara. Arhantas have overcome even Kabalinkarahara. It doesn't mean that Arhantas do not eat something. They eat something like, Nivapa Sutta, it says, according to Nivapa Sutta, the deers go to the grass field controlled by the hunter. They eat grass, but they immediately come back. They don't live and sleep in the field of the grass. Arahants also like that. They eat something, material things, without depending on the food. Not only Kabalinkara ahara, but even Pasahara, Manusanketana ahara, even Vijnana. All of them belong to the Patisampada or the dependent origination. This is the vision. As soon as we receive the vision, we come to the mission. Mission with details, the Noble Eightfold Path. Sammaditthi, right understanding. Samma Sankappa, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration or tranquility. This is the path. This is the mission. Having that vision, we come to this mission. Practicing this mission, we come to the results. Samma jnana, samma vimukti. Vimuttasmin vimuttamiti jnanam hoti. After we liberate from suffering, we understand, now I have liberated from suffering, from everything, from lobha, dosa, moha, ragakya, dosakya, mohakya. With this understanding, our saddha, our confidence in what the Buddha taught should develop. That saddha or confidence leads to go forward on the path of liberation. That is why the Buddha says, saddha mulika sabbeti kusala dhamma. All the wholesome deeds depends on saddha, confidence or faith in what the Buddha taught. This path, in short, we can say, Trivida Siksha, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, or Adisila, Adichitta, Adipanya. These three things are interrelated. Sila is not alone. Sila or virtue should consist with Panya. Dittin Chanupagamma Silava. When we practice Sila in the supramundane level, we have high understanding. In the mundane level, we practice 5 precepts, focusing on our spiritual, our ethical life and our blissful life hereafter. But when we come to the absolute truth, having the Sammaditthi in the supramundane level, when we come to Sila or virtue, we have clear vision without going to extremes. When someone sees the arising of 5 aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of nihilism or Uchedavada, according to Kachanagata Sutta. If he sees the cessation of 5 aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of Sasatavada or eternalism. With this understanding, we come to the middle path. Dittin Chanupagamma Silava. Dittin Chanupagamma Majjhima Patipada. When we release from these extremes, we immediately come to the path. That path is explained in various ways according to the audience. Sometimes Buddha explained the path as the Noble Eightfold Path. Sometimes Buddha explained the path as Sila Samadhi Panya. According to Abhinyana Sutta, Buddha says, you have to practice only Samatha Vipassana, tranquility and insight meditation. According to Mahasatipatthana Sutta, Buddha says, you have to practice only one thing, which is mindfulness. No matter whatever we practice, we start everything with this vision. Therefore, whatever we do everything Viveka-nisitam, Viraga-nisitam, Nirodha-nisitam, Vasaga-parinami. These are the qualities of our path. No matter whatever we do, even though we offer something to others, we do everything Viveka-nisitam, Viraga-nisitam, Nirodha-nisitam, Vosagga Parinam. Even though we clean the temple, we do that thing, thinking this message as Chintamaya Panya, the wisdom of thinking. Whenever we practice Samatha Bhavana, Samma Samadhi is not the end of the path. One day, some monks went to another religious person's monastery. They asked that, Bhante, your teacher, Gautama Buddha, explains the Maitri Metta Bhavana, loving kindness meditation. We, our Jatila, or Pariprajak also explain and practice Metta Bhavana. Both of us are same. Those monks had no answer. They were silent. They came back to the Buddha and explained everything what they happened. Buddha says, because our loving kindness is different. What is that? Our loving kindness meditation focus on Viveka-nisitang, Viraga-nisitang, Nirodha-nisitang, or Sagparinam. It consists with Viraga, not attachment, Nirodha, seeing cessation, focusing on the Nibbana. Our Sila consists with Samadhi. When we wash a hand, we use other hand. Using both hands, we wash them. Sila and Panya also like that. Samadhi and Panya also like that. Samahito bhikkhave bhikkhu yata bhutam pajanati. When mind gains concentration, wise person reflect on impermanence as anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering or dissatisfactory, and anatta, selflessness. This is the path. As the result of path, we come to the results, Samma Jnana, Samma Vimukti, right knowledge and right liberation. Vimuttasmin vimuttamiti jnanam hoti. That is the very important thing, Every place we can see Dhamma saha mehevara, vision and mission. When we come to Buddhism, we can see vision, mission, and result too. That is the very special thing in Buddhism. The more we liberate from suffering, the more we know that I have liberated from these kind of negativities from our mind. And as the result of this practice, we can see our final goal. Our final goal is happiness. When we practice generosity, we can see our happiness. Piti mudarang vindati data. He who practices generosity gains a lot of happiness. When we practice sila, we can be proud of our character. We are happy. We are honored. We are appreciated in the society. When we practice loving kindness meditation or any samatha bhavana, we can develop the facts of jhana, such as vitakka, vichara, piti. Facture is one of the facts of jhana. Not only that, when we practice mindfulness continuously, fulfilling the 7 enlightenment factors, sati, dhamma vishaya, piriya, then piti, we come to piti sambodha. We come to the highest level of happiness, Nibbanam Paraman Sukham. Nibbana is the highest bliss. Not only that, very important result we receive according to several discourses, such as Deepa Sutta, Indriya Bhavana Sutta, so on. After our practice, after coming to the end, when we have negative experiences, we can turn it to positive experience. patikole apatikole sanya viharati. When we have negative, unpleasant experiences, we can turn it to pleasant experience. When someone blames us, we can think that he is not blaming, he is appreciating me. Very nice. Please say again. We think that change in our perception. We think that he is appreciating me. Apatikole patikole sanya viharati. When someone is appreciating us, we know very well, very nearly, he will blame me. That is the sign of blaming. Now he is appreciating me. Next moment, he is the person who blames me. And also, not only that, if we like, we can overcome positive and negative, or good and bad, all the experiences, removing everything, keeping our wisdom in the highest standard as sunyata or emptiness. If we see the world has already ceased, I experience, I understand something through my mind consciousness. At that moment, nothing is in the outside world that depends on my experience. Keeping our attention in this highest understanding, we can see the world as the emptiness. Then we can come to neutral or equanimity, upekka. Without changing anything outside material world, developing consciousness, mindfulness, and especially wisdom, changing our perception, we can face the world without suffering, sorrow, lamentation. How nice. This is the highest result. Now, we always try to change the external world. We always go to correct the world. We have to do only change in our perception. Change in our perception. What are the perceptions that we should develop, which come in Girimananda Sutta? Anitya Sanya, Anatta Sanya, Asubha Sanya, Adinava Sanya, Pahana Sanya, Viraga Sanya. Those are the perceptions that help us to change our thinking way. When we change our thinking pattern, we have nothing to change outside the world. We are ready to accept anything as it is. This is the highest result of practicing this mission, having the correct vision, which consists with the Four Noble Truths. There are some other techniques too that Bhante Sariputta explains here. If someone can understand Jara Marana or aging and death, if someone can understand Jati or birth, so on, there are 16 things that we can see here. Through understanding anything, we can gain right vision. As soon as we enter the vision, we come to the stream. Sota, Aryattangika Magga. We enter the Aryattangika Magga as the result of having this vision. Vision means the way how suffering arises and ceases. Mission means practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, or Tisika, or Samadhi, Panya, or Satipatthana. Results, Vidyadimukti, or Sammajnana, Sammaditthi. Here, Sammaditthi is explained in various ways in Buddha's message. It consists with the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Four Noble Truths, five aggregates, and the dependent origination. These three things are interrelated when the Buddha explained the Four Noble Truths or the Sammaditthi. Four Noble Truths and the dependent origination, Patisampada, interrelated. As the result of this understanding, we give the priority to practice. We do everything in our day-to-day life, giving the priority to our practice. It doesn't mean that we don't do other things. Actually, we do our day-to-day activities. We do everything in our day-to-day life, but we have given the priority to practice this path in our agenda in the highest level, which is the Aryattangika Magga, or in short, in very short mindfulness, in very, very, very short Anapanasati Bhavana, breathing meditation. We should add mindfulness to our breathing in and out. Finally, our happiness, our success of our spiritual life depends on the duration of breathing meditation. Most of disciples attain enlightenment, and all the Buddhas who are in the past have attained enlightenment by practicing breathing meditation. Okay, dear venerable sirs, nuns, friends in the Dhamma, we really appreciate your good attention, active listening, which encouraged me. And if you have any question, you can ask. Bhante Sandajiva, any question?
So Bhante, you are saying that, so when we experience anything, by the time we make sense of it, by the time we understand it, what we experience is already died, already gone. Right? So by the time we understand, make sense of what we saw or heard, and the original sensory impression or sensory input is gone. So we are always experiencing our mental life.
At that moment, we should reflect on that our understanding, mind consciousness also impermanent. That is why Buddha said, Tatta Tatta Vipassati. Not only outside material world has ceased, even my present experience, what I have experienced in here, mind consciousness also arises and ceases at the moment. Yatta namancha rupancha asesanga purujyati. With this understanding, we release from the outside material world. At the same time, we release from the namanta or mental formations too.
So if I keep looking at a flower, I keep looking at for 5 minutes. So I see the flower for all 5 minutes. So am I seeing the flower which is dead?
Actually, that belongs to the conventional truth. We should understand the difference between conventional truth and ultimate truth. That is actually viparinama. That is changing. The changing and anicca are different. The changing of viparinama can be understood by anyone. We don't need to find a Buddha to understand a flower is going down. But very important thing, changing, very important thing, anicca or impermanence, it has a deep meaning. Ahutva sambhutang hutva nabhavisati.
So I see maybe 100 times the flower again and again.
Yes, again and again we see.
Every time I see it, the original
Impression. Yes,
experience is gone.
yes. Because of our ignorance, we contact everything together. Because of our trusna, tanha or avidya.
I think that I'm looking at the same flower.
Yes, with the avidya and bhava tanha, we are clinging to the world.
Does that mean ultimately there are no flower, no hunter?
Actually, that is an extreme. If someone says there is no something outside the world, that is an extreme. If you think there is something, that is also an extreme. Buddha never says that there is no something.
I mean, ultimately there are no flower and we analyze it.
we don't say it according to especially Kachanagota Sutta. If a person sees the arising of five aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of nihilism or Uchedavad. If a person sees the cessation of five aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of Sasvatavada or eternalism. These both extremes should be overcome by one theory, which is Aryo Nyayo, the theory of noble ones. Parisampada. Iti imasmin satidang hoti, imasmin asadidang hoti. When this is, when this is not, this is not.
The perception, yeah, maybe there's no flounder, but there's an arising of continuously.
When we go to the deeper level, actually there are only four fundamental elements outside world. Flower is inside. We create, this is flower. When we see this monk, I think this is Venerable Sir. When his mother sees him, she says that this is my son. Son or monk are not outside. Flower or rock or stone is not outside. Outside world, we can see four fundamental elements. We name the persons and things according to our perception, according to our previous experience. Here, Buddha's statue. This is the statue of the Buddha for us. When a robber comes here, it is a good thing for him to sell. Sometimes he doesn't know Buddhism. Flower or rock or person, son, mother, father, everything we create inside. There are no fathers outside. There are no flowers, no birds outside. But outside we can see four fundamental elements. Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo, earth element, water element, fire element, air element. But those elements also are not permanent. They arise at the moment according to our senses, and also they cease at the moment. But if we are ignorant, we think before I see something, there was something. After I have seen something, something remains. That is the nature of ignorance. Our all experiences are like that. When we go to the mirror, at the moment, reflection arises there. Before we went to the mirror, there was not a reflection there. When we left the mirror, our reflection doesn't remain there. It arises and ceases at the moment with the conditions. Our all experiences that we receive through our six senses also like that. They arise at the moment with the conditions according to our internal senses. Those internal senses arise according to our mental situation, our avidya, trishna, so on. Ignorance, mental formations, craving, according to mental facts, mental formations, every moment we create the senses. According to our senses, the external world appears. That external world is different from person to person. Not only from person to person, even one person, it is different from even one person from moment to moment. Now you are pleased to me, you are pleasant to me. If I blame you, suddenly your perception changed. According to your perception, your senses change. Then your ideas are completely different. Sometimes after I live here, When you look at this seat, you may get angry. Not me, but even with this pillow, you may get angry. But this is same. External world things are different from person to person and from moment to moment. If we have this understanding and if we can maintain our mindfulness and wisdom in the maximum level, we can liberate from the outside world, material world. At the same time, reflecting on impermanence of our mind consciousness at the moment, we release from even our inside, even our mind consciousness too. යත්ත නාමංච රූපංච අසීසං වරුජ්ජති පටිගං රූප සංඥංච එත්තේ සාචිදතේ ජටං. We release from the outside material world first, then we release from our mentality or namanta, and also finally we release from the passa anta, the extreme of contact. Now we are in the samudayanta, the extreme of contact. That is why we always live in the past experience. When we practice insight meditation, we reflect on especially the past experience. That is why we said, ditte dittamattam balisate. What we have seen, that just seen. It is said in past participle, not present tense. Not dasanatte dasanamattam. Ditte dittamattam. Gachanto va gachamiti pajanati, we can see in Satipatthana Sutta, it depends on Satipatthana in the conventional truth. When we go to inside meditation, vipassana, samudaya dhammanupassī viharati, vaya dhammanupassī viharati, that is vipassana bhava.
You made a good point. When you're looking at the mirror, we will see it. When you're not looking at it, you can't see it.
Yes. The food also which is in front of us, when we taste something, that is also like that. Our desire arises because of our ignorance. What is the ignorance? When we eat something, when we are tasting something, we always keep it into the outside world. That is why we attachment to the world. Our entire experience also like that. This is the nature of the Dhamma's quality, Sammaditthika, Akalika. Visible results immediately effective. When we come to this understanding, that understanding is ours, then we don't need to trust in even Buddha. Until we come to this understanding, we depend on the Buddha or Sangha. But when we come to the experience, that is our own experience, then we depend on the Dhamma. Dhamma means our own experience. Okay, thank you so much for your patience and good attention. Thank you for listening. By the power of all these spiritual energies that we accrue through all these meritorious and wholesome deeds, may you be well, happy and peaceful. May all your spiritual goals meet with success. Finally, may all of us attain the supreme bliss of liberation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dukkhaṃ pantāca nirdukkhaṃ, bhayaṃ pantāca nirbhayam, sokhaṃ pantāca nissokhaṃ, hontu sabbe pipānino. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.